As we record this, the war rages on in Israel, but we're going to take a moment now to look to the future. I'm Scott Ott with Steve Green and Bill Whittle, and this episode of Right Angle is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. And gentlemen, when I was glued to the TV, sadly, I wish I could pry myself away, but just staring at the TV or my phone, looking at the latest updates, the latest video, the latest stories coming out of Israel, I couldn't help but think there's got to be a better way. And when I did, my mind went back to a video I saw many years ago that was done in almost a humorous manner by our friend Andrew Klavan, called The One State Solution. And Stephen Green, I'm sure you're familiar with this video, but
Yes.
basically the premise was you want things to get better in the Middle East, give the whole area to the Jews. Now, I'm not going to be as expansive as Andrew was, because Andrew basically said give the entire Middle East. I'm just saying
Yes.
in the territory that Israel believes is their own territory, why not let them be in charge there instead of entertaining ourselves with this idea of a two-state solution? And here's how I envision it, Steve. Anyone who doesn't want to be here is welcome to leave. Anyone who wants Israeli citizenship is welcome. Maybe if you've already been a resident and kept your nose clean for years, maybe you automatically get Israeli citizenship, if you sign a paper that says you want to be an Israeli citizen. And then also, all those people who have been living under the boot of Hamas and other terrorist governments now get to experience free elections, free speech, free religion, women as full citizens. Steve, can a one-state solution work?
Wow. I haven't really thought about this, so let me think out loud here and see what I come up with. Maybe I'll need some extra input from you guys as well. Wow. It's not often appreciated, but the one country in the Middle East where Arabs can participate in free and fair and regular elections and send their own people to parliament is Israel. That's it. That's the one country in the Middle East. And about 20% of the Israeli population happen to be Arab Muslims. It's only about 80% Jewish. However, for Israel to stay Israel, it must remain a majority Jewish country. There's no negotiating this. That's why Israel has never, ever accepted the so-called right of return for Palestinians into Israel as a negotiating. I've
chip.
Forgotten what word I'm thinking of. Yeah, they won't even consider it because to invite in that many Arab Muslims would be the end of Israel as Israel requires to exist. The Jews need a homeland. We've learned that lesson the hard way. So let's look at Gaza, because that's the point of contention right now after Saturday's terror invasion. The population of Gaza is now 2 million, and of course, overwhelmingly, probably 98.9% Arab Muslim. Israel can't absorb that many. They just cannot. It would be so detrimental to the political, cultural, and religious health of the Jewish state. That said, what we've seen, Israel is going to have to govern Gaza again. I don't know for how long. I don't know if they should send settlers back in like they did before 2005. The settlers were removed. Here's another thing. We hear all this talk from the left about decolonization. Israel decolonized the Gaza Strip in 2005, including removing their own settlers, sometimes at gunpoint, to give this land, this Gaza Strip, back to the locals. And their only reward for that has been 2 decades almost now of rocket attacks and now this terror invasion over the weekend. So clearly that's not working. So Israel's going to have to run Gaza for long enough to root out Hamas, root out the fighters. There's going to be a lot of killing. Sorry, that's the fact. And run this place the same way the British or the French would have between the world wars. So no, you look at the West Bank, and that makes the problem even bigger. Israel has 2 options here. Neither one of them are very good. In fact, one of them is pretty awful. The first option is to continue essentially the way things were before 2005, where Israel is sort of a colonial power over the West Bank and Gaza. And the other is to formally annex the West Bank and Gaza and engage in massive deportations of the Palestinians. So no, there isn't a one-state solution within the lands known as that was once known as the British Palestine Mandate and is now known as Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. It can't be done without too much awfulness, Scott. Although, if Israel suffers another attack like the one over the weekend, maybe we will get the second option. I don't know.
Bill Whittle, I think Steve makes a pretty compelling argument, if only from the point of view of incorporating the existing Palestinian population within Gaza, some 2.3 million people. You'd water down the population so much in Israel that you'd threaten You'd threaten Israel as the Jewish homeland, basically.
Yep.
And I'm trying to imagine, when I was growing up in Pennsylvania, I could ride my bicycle to the Delaware River, on the other side of which was New Jersey. And it's hard for me to imagine if I had lived in Pennsylvania and New Jersey was populated by people who absolutely despised Pennsabilians and wanted to see us dead.
Well, that is what New Jersey people think.
It was just on the other side of the river, and we don't have any comprehension. I've been to Israel, and it was years ago, but I remember just kind of thinking, "Wow, this isn't very big. Like you can get everywhere in practically a day. It's a very short drive to wherever you want to go." Bill, I can't imagine them going on with this charade that somehow the Palestinian government structure is going to join the civilized nations and start behaving like a legitimate nation state. On the other hand, I think Steve's right. I don't think they can just be absorbed. I can't imagine massive deportations to the extent that you would say, okay, well, they're all out of here now. They've gone back and returned to the Arab homelands that profess to love them so much, or perhaps we could send them all to Harvard. But Bill, is there anything short of a one-state solution that will work? Do you think Steve's strategy of colonial governance is viable?
This is needless to say, the thorniest issue on the planet for the last 80 years, and there's no way to say, oh, if we just do this, this, and this, and then that's it. What I do think has happened is that this sneak attack, this mass murder, has, let's just say, gotten Israel's full attention and focused their mind. What happens after this is not going to be like anything that happened before this. Israel has, I think, very admirably shown restraint. Let's just cut to the chase here, okay? Most of the people who call themselves Palestinians, if they could throw a switch and murder all of the Israelis, they would do it. Israel has the military, economic, scientific power to murder all of these Palestinians, push them all into the river with bulldozers, into the ocean with bulldozers, and they don't. So I think they're going to start rethinking that equation. Now, since your question was specifically about a possible political settlement for this, I think the salient point here is what Steve brought up. I think this is really the heart of the issue. Steve said, and he's correct, that something like 20% of the population of the state of Israel are Arab Muslims. Those people are not attacking hospitals and throwing grenades into Girl Scout rooms on a daily basis. So it's not a question of whether or not Israel can live with Muslims or Arabs. It's a question of which kind of Muslims and Arabs can they live with? What is the attitude of the people? The only word that comes to mind for the sight of the entire cities in Gaza turning out, cheering young men, cheering at the sight of a naked Israeli woman being driven through town and running up to smash her with sticks. Those people can't live with Israel, and they can't live with anybody. And I think this is the point where we have to start saying, and I think we're going to be facing this in America too. I think we're seeing the beginnings of it already. There's going to have to be a reckoning here with people who are constantly at war with you and who you refuse to believe or refuse to recognize the need to deal with. Iran rather has been at war with America since 1979, and we just pretend it's not true. We just pretend it's not true because we can afford to. We have enormous problems with our southern border. We have enormous problems with crime inside America's decaying cities, and we also think, well, that'll work itself out somehow. It won't. It won't work itself out somehow. I think if it were up to me, I would certainly eliminate the Gaza Strip as a territory. I would eliminate it. The idea of I did not say I would kill all the people in the Gaza Strip. That's an entirely different thing, and I'm not saying that at all because I don't want to become like these murderers. The thing that I think is most important to realize here, guys, if you take a step back, that it's just a two-part point. There was no such thing as Palestine prior to 1948. It just simply didn't exist.
It was South Syria under Turkish rule.
They were Syrians, they were Jordanians, they were whatever. Palestinian is an invented word that was created as a response to the creation of the State of Israel, which I might point out has been there for 3,000 years, and the entire religion of Islam doesn't go back past the 700 BC. So this has been an issue that has been compromised on and kicked down the road. But clearly, after the Bill Clinton peace attempts, where they offered the Palestinian 97% of what they wanted and Arafat declined, it's because the leadership of that group has a vested interest in fomenting hate and anger and rage and murder. That's what they are subsidizing. And so those people cannot live across a border with people who aren't trying to go the other way to kill them. The Israelis could have knocked down that wall. My point is my moral point is very simple. The Israelis could have knocked down the wall between Gaza and Israel with tanks any day they wanted to and killed every single one of the people in there, and they could have done that any day since 1948, right? But they didn't. And now I think Israel has to face the fact that this is not going to go away, that these people are not going to ever give up on this idea, that they are becoming, if anything, more fanatical, more rage-filled, more driven by hatred. And now it's time to realize that this is not a sustainable solution. This is not something that you can just continue to kick down the road. These people want the blood of every Israeli in the entire world, certainly in that country. And now it's time to deal with that. And again, the operational point here is that it is not impossible for Muslims or Arabs to live either in cooperation with Israel or even inside Israel. It's just impossible for these Muslims and Arabs to live within and next to Israel. These inside the Gaza Strip, who are no different genetically than the Arabs that are on the other side of the border, who have members in parliament, in the Knesset and so on, but they have not been brainwashed and intoxicated and indoctrinated and all the rest for the last 50, 60, 70, 80 years. And that toxin is going to have to be dealt with.
You know, Bill, if I can throw something in here, Scott, I might be wrong about clearing the Gaza Strip thing because there's precedent for this, and it was set by Kuwait, who removed 200,000 Palestinians for celebrating Saddam Hussein and taking the anti-Kuwait side in the Gulf War. There is precedent for this, and it was set by an Arab nation.
Well, my thoughts on this are simple as I am, and I don't pretend to have any kind of solution or deep understanding of the situation. All I know is what I read in the news, as a president famously said. But I think a couple of things are clear. Whatever the solution is, Israel must decide what it's going to do. And we, as Israel's ally, we must abide by Israel's decision. And there are a lot of people in this country who think that Israel is the evil one in this, but that's a kind of a false equivalency, basically assuming that, for some reason, because Israel's stronger, therefore they're the bad ones, because they seem to be able to wield greater firepower, they must be the evil oppressor. If the Palestinians could do what Israel has the ability to do, they would have done it, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. We would just be talking about the government of Palestine and Israel, the ancient people from the Bible, because we wouldn't be hearing about them anymore. So number one is Israel's got to decide, and I think the United States must abide by that decision. And number two is, I don't think that 2.3 million people in the Gaza Strip are all evil. However, either there's a minority of those people ruining it for the rest of them because they're Hamas or evil terrorists, or you're all like that. You don't get a choice. You don't have to say, well, no, there is a minority that's ruining it for the either you're all like that, or there's a minority that's ruining it for the rest of you. So Palestinians must decide, just like Israel must decide as a government how they're going to handle this on a governance level. Palestinians must decide what kind of people they are. And if you're really decent people and you really don't abide by these attacks and babies having their heads chopped off and teenagers being shot down at a concert and people being burned and going door to door and just shooting innocent grandmothers and babies, then you need to stand up and express that. And I know that you're under the heel of Hamas and other terrorist organizations, but the only way the world will know is if the Palestinians stand up and rebel against their own government. Otherwise, we will have to assume that you're all on board with what just happened, and then we have to oppose it. And whatever that means, it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be pretty for anybody involved. War is horrible, but this is a situation that Israel existentially has to win. Not just now, but for decades to come. And the Prime Minister Netanyahu has been making statements where he basically said, what we do next will let our neighbors know for decades to come that they must never do anything like this again. And as peaceful a person as I am, I can't help but say, amen, and let it be done quickly. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, my name is Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible.